You think you deserve that money? That trust fund belongs to Tiffany now. She's better than you'll ever be. The words from my stepmother's phone call pierced through me like daggers. I gripped my hotel room desk, trying to steady my racing heart. Janet's voice dripped with satisfaction as she delivered the news that she'd emptied the trust fund my mom had left me. My name is Gabriella Mitchell, and at 28, I thought I'd finally escaped the toxicity of my family dynamics. I work in pharmaceutical sales, which keeps me traveling across the country most weeks. It should have been just another Tuesday in Minneapolis, preparing for tomorrow's client meeting. Instead, I was listening to Janet gloat about stealing my inheritance. "Thanks for letting me know," I replied calmly, my voice betraying none of the rage building inside me. I could almost see Janet's smug expression falter at my composed response. She'd expected tears, pleading, or anger. Anything but this quiet acceptance. "That's all you have to say?" Janet pressed, clearly disappointed by my reaction. "Tiffany needs that money for her wedding and new house. You're just going to waste it on your meaningless sales career." I thought about my mom, who'd passed away when I was 16. She'd built a successful business from nothing and left me the trust fund to pursue my own dreams. Janet, who married my dad just 2 years after Mom died, had been trying to get her hands on that money ever since. "Is there anything else?" I asked, keeping my voice level. The silence on the other end was telling. What Janet didn't know was that 6 months ago, I'd had a conversation with Mr. Harrison, my mother's old lawyer. He'd warned me about some suspicious inquiries Janet had been making about the trust. Together, we'd put safeguards in place, legal protections that would make any unauthorized access not just impossible, but prosecutable. "You've always been such a disappointment," Janet spat, trying one last time to provoke me. "Your stepsister deserves this more than you ever did." I ended the call and looked out my hotel window at the Minneapolis skyline. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. Everything was documented. Every call, every attempt, every manipulation. Janet had finally overplayed her hand, and I was ready. Living with Janet was like walking on eggshells. After my mom's death from cancer when I was 16, my dad seemed desperate to rebuild our family. He married Janet just 2 years later, bringing along her daughter Tiffany, who was 13 at the time. The tension was immediate and suffocating. My mom had built her pharmaceutical consulting business from scratch, working tirelessly to ensure my future was secure. The trust fund she left me wasn't just money, it was her legacy, her way of protecting me even after she was gone. But Janet saw it differently. To her, it was an unfair advantage I had over Tiffany. "Your mom wouldn't want you to be so selfish," she'd say, trying to guilt me into sharing the inheritance. "We're all family now." But we weren't family, not in the way that mattered. While my dad buried himself in work to cope with his grief, Janet systematically worked to push me to the sidelines. Tiffany became the star of our household. Every achievement, no matter how small, was celebrated lavishly. Meanwhile, my academic scholarships and business school acceptance went practically unnoticed. Janet made sure my dad only saw what she wanted him to see. The real wake-up call came during my college graduation. I'd finished top of my class, landed a prestigious job, and done it all while working part-time. My dad couldn't make it because Tiffany had a minor cold. "She needs her father right now," Janet had insisted. That's when I knew nothing would ever change unless I changed it myself. I moved out the next day and focused on building my career. The trust fund stayed untouched, not because I didn't need it, but because accessing it meant dealing with Janet's interference. Every time I visited home, she'd make snide comments about my privileged position, how Tiffany struggled without the same advantages. 6 months ago, when Mr. Harrison called to warn me about Janet's inquiries, everything clicked into place. She'd been playing a long game, waiting for the right moment to strike. But I wasn't that vulnerable 16-year-old anymore. I was my mother's daughter, and I'd learned from the best about protecting what was mine. The trust fund wasn't just about money. It represented everything my mom had worked for. Sitting in my hotel room that evening, I pulled out the small photo I always carried of her. She was smiling, confident, the kind of woman I'd always aspired to be. The trust fund was meant to be my safety net, my chance to take risks and build something of my own, just like she had. I dialed Mr. Harrison's number, my fingers steady despite the anger still coursing through me. He answered on the second ring, his voice familiar and reassuring. Janet finally made her move, I said, cutting straight to the point. She claims she's transferred everything to Tiffany. I was expecting this, he replied. I got an alert about attempted access to the account this morning. Don't worry, Gabriella. The additional security measures we put in place worked exactly as planned. Every attempt was logged and documented. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. So, nothing's actually been transferred? Not a penny, he confirmed. But we've got her dead to rights on attempted fraud. The documentation is bulletproof. Would you like me to proceed with the next steps? I thought about all the years of manipulation, the snide comments, the way Janet had slowly poisoned my relationship with my dad. She'd been so confident in her plan, so sure of her control over the situation, that she hadn't even considered I might be 2 steps ahead. Yes, I said firmly. It's time to end this. Send the evidence to the family lawyer and copy my dad on everything. I want him to see exactly what his wife tried to do. Consider it done, Mr. Harrison said. And Gabriella, your mother would be proud. She always said you were smarter than anyone gave you credit for. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and booked an earlier flight home. My client meeting would have to wait. I had a family matter to attend to, and this time, I would be the one in control. I landed in Boston the next morning, the autumn air crisp and biting. My dad's house, the one I grew up in, looked exactly the same, but something felt different. Maybe it was me. I'd called ahead to let him know I was coming, but I hadn't mentioned Janet's phone call. Some conversations needed to happen face to face. I found them all in the living room, Dad, Janet, and Tiffany. Janet's smug smile faltered when she saw me walk in, replaced by confusion at my calm demeanor. Gabriella, my dad started, looking concerned. I didn't expect you until later. Is everything okay? Actually, Dad, we need to talk. I pulled out my phone and the file Mr. Harrison had sent over. Yesterday, Janet called to tell me she'd emptied my trust fund and given everything to Tiffany. I thought you should see exactly what happened. Janet's face went pale. I was just trying to help Tiffany. Don't. My voice was steel. Every attempt you made to access the account was documented. Every call, every forged signature, every manipulation. It's all here. I handed my dad the file. His hands shook as he read through the papers, his expression darkening with each page. Janet, what did you do? His voice was barely a whisper. She's lying. Tiffany jumped in, her face red. She's always been jealous of me. I pulled out another document, the complete trust fund statement. The money's still there, safe and untouched. Janet's attempts to transfer it failed because I was warned about her plans months ago. I took precautions. Precautions? Janet spat. You set me up. No, I replied calmly. I protected what was mine, just like my mom taught me to do. The silence in the room was deafening as my dad read through each document, every manipulative email Janet had sent to the bank, every forged signature attempt, every calculated move she'd made to steal my inheritance. It was all there in black and white. I did this for our family, Janet protested, but her voice wavered. Tiffany needed... Stop. My dad's voice cracked. Just stop, Janet. These documents... You tried to forge my signature. You lied to the bank. You... He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a pain I hadn't seen since my mom died. Gabriella, I had no idea. Of course you didn't, I said softly. Janet made sure of that. Mr. Harrison had organized everything chronologically, showing years of Janet's attempts to undermine my relationship with my father, all while trying to get her hands on my trust fund. The latest documents showed her failed attempt to transfer the money, along with her subsequent angry calls to the bank. This is ridiculous. Tiffany jumped up, her face red. Mom was just trying to make things fair. Gabriella's always had everything handed to her. I turned to my stepsister, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. Handed to me? I worked through college, built my career from scratch, and never touch that trust fund. Mom left it to me because she wanted me to have options, just like she did. But Janet couldn't stand that, could she? Janet's composure finally cracked. You ungrateful little... I've already filed charges, I cut her off. The bank has all the evidence of attempted fraud. Mr. Harrison is handling everything. I turned to my dad. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you needed to know the truth. The weight of 12 years of manipulation hung in the air. My dad looked at Janet like he was seeing her for the first time, and not in a good way. The next few moments changed everything. My dad stood up, his hands trembling as he held the documents. Janet, I want you out of this house. Tonight. What? Janet's voice rose to a shrill pitch. You can't be serious. After everything I've done for this family? Done for this family? My dad's voice was quiet but firm. You tried to steal from my daughter. You forged my signature. You've been lying to me for years. Tiffany started crying, but these weren't her usual manipulative tears. She looked genuinely shocked, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of what her mother had tried to do. The police will want to talk to you, I said to Janet. Mr. Harrison has already filed the reports. The bank's fraud department is involved now. You planned this, Janet hissed. You knew I would try to access the trust fund. No, Janet, you planned this. I just made sure I was ready when you did. I turned to my dad. There's more. Mr. Harrison found evidence that she's been skimming money from your accounts too. Small amounts, building up over years. My dad sank back into his chair, looking devastated. I felt a pang of guilt for causing him pain, but he needed to know the truth. Get out, he repeated to Janet. Both of you. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce. As Janet and Tiffany gathered their things, throwing accusations and tears around in equal measure, I stood quietly by the window. The same window where I used to watch for my mom to come home from work. I could almost hear her voice. Always be prepared, sweetheart, and never let anyone take what's rightfully yours. In the weeks that followed, my dad and I had some long overdue conversations. We sat in the kitchen one evening, the same kitchen where my mom used to help me with my homework, and really talked for the first time in years. I failed you, he said, staring into his coffee cup. After your mom died, I was so focused on not being alone that I didn't see what was happening right in front of me. We both made mistakes, I admitted. I could have told you sooner about Janet's behavior, but I wanted proof first. I needed you to see it for yourself. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Janet faced charges of attempted fraud and financial exploitation. She tried to paint herself as a victim, claiming she was only trying to equalize things between me and Tiffany, but the evidence was overwhelming. The bank's documentation showed years of calculated attempts to access my trust fund. Tiffany reached out to me via email, claiming she hadn't known about her mother's plans. I wasn't sure I believed her, but I understood she was struggling with her own revelations about her mother's true nature. I'm sorry, she wrote. I always thought you had everything handed to you. Mom made it seem like you were the privileged one, but now I see she was just jealous of what your mom built for you. Mr. Harrison helped me set up my own business consulting firm, something I'd always dreamed of but had been too cautious to pursue. The trust fund my mom left me became the seed money for my new venture, just as she'd intended. Your mother would be proud, Mr. Harrison told me during one of our meetings. She always said you had her business sense and your father's heart. She knew you'd do great things when you were ready. Dad started coming by my office for lunch every week. Sometimes we talked about Mom, sharing memories that Janet had made it uncomfortable to discuss for so many years. Other times we talked about the future. He was finally starting to look like himself again, the dad I remembered from before Mom got sick. You know what your mom used to say about you? He asked one day. She said you were like a diamond. Pressure just made you stronger. Life took on a new rhythm. My consulting firm grew quickly, attracting clients who appreciated my direct approach and industry knowledge. I hired a small team, including Sarah, a brilliant analyst who reminded me of my mom. Same drive, same determination to prove herself. Janet's trial ended with a plea deal. She avoided jail time but had to pay significant restitution and was banned from working in any financial capacity. The last I heard, she'd moved to Arizona to live with her sister. Tiffany stayed in Boston working as a teacher's assistant. We kept minimal contact, mainly through occasional emails. Dad threw himself into rebuilding our relationship. He started sharing stories about my mom that he'd kept buried for years, how they met at a business conference, their early struggles to start her company, the late nights planning their future. Each story helped heal a little piece of what we'd lost. One evening, as we sorted through old photos in the attic, we found Mom's business journal. Inside was a letter addressed to me, dated just weeks before she passed. My dearest Gabriella, I'm leaving you more than money. I'm leaving you the freedom to choose your path. Don't let anyone dim your light or tell you what you deserve. You're stronger than you know, smarter than they give you credit for, and capable of anything you set your mind to. Trust yourself. I do. Love, Mom. Those words became my mantra as I built my business. I framed the letter and hung it in my office, a daily reminder of where I came from and where I was going. My dad retired from his job and started volunteering at a grief counseling center, helping other families navigate loss without losing themselves. Sometimes he'd consult for my firm, bringing years of experience and a perspective that complemented my approach perfectly. Looking back on those events 5 years later, I'm amazed at how much has changed. My consulting firm has expanded to 3 cities, helping pharmaceutical companies streamline their operations, just like Mom used to do. The trust fund she left me didn't just secure my future, it became the foundation for helping others build theirs. Dad retired completely last year, but he still comes by the office to mentor our younger employees. He says it keeps him connected to Mom's legacy. We have lunch every Wednesday, making up for all those years we lost to Janet's manipulation. The hardest lesson I learned wasn't about money or betrayal. It was about standing up for myself. Mom knew that one day I'd need to fight for what was mine, and she made sure I had the tools to do it. She taught me that true strength isn't about being tough. It's about being prepared and patient enough to wait for the right moment. Sometimes I visit the old house where I grew up. Dad still lives there, but it's different now. The walls have been repainted, the furniture rearranged, all traces of Janet's presence erased. In Mom's old office, which Dad turned into a library, I found her collection of business books last week. Inside one, she'd written notes about teaching me to run the company someday. I never got that chance with her, but I'm building something of my own now. Every decision I make in my business carries echoes of her wisdom. The trust fund she left me wasn't just about money. It was about believing in myself enough to stand my ground when others tried to take what was mine. Janet's attempt to steal my inheritance taught me something valuable. Sometimes people show you exactly who they are, and the best response is to be prepared. I'm grateful now for those difficult years because they shaped me into someone my mom would be proud of. Someone who doesn't just survive challenges but grows stronger from them. The family photo albums have been reorganized, keeping the memories that matter. On my desk at work sits my favorite picture, Mom and me at her office, both of us laughing about something long forgotten. It reminds me daily that while some people try to tear you down, others build you up in ways that last a lifetime. On the anniversary of my mother's passing, my father and I visited her grave together. We brought fresh flowers from her favorite garden, a tradition we had started that year. Standing there, I shared with him the letter I'd found in her journal. He read it silently, his hands trembling slightly as he held the worn paper. "She was always thinking ahead," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "Even when she was fighting for her own life, she was fighting for yours too." In that moment, I realized that every step I had taken to protect her legacy, every choice to stand firm, every decision to build something meaningful, was her final gift to me. "She would be so proud of you," Dad said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "And I couldn't be prouder to call you my daughter." Together, we stood in quiet reflection, knowing that while some wounds never fully heal, love and resilience have the power to transform even the deepest scars into strength.